class is a community. A community needs to have social cohesion, some kind of structure, leadership, shared goals, shared belonging, identity, and so on. And obviously that is a different story when you're just dealing with like the Hollywood squares. You might have people who don't want to put their video on. It could be harder to foster that sense of in group. We're a group and we've got some sort of shared purpose. People may tend to be more withdrawn. But having said that, many of us know ourselves that online communities can, be invigorating. They can provide a genuine sense of belonging, shared values and so on, progression. So it's certainly not out of the question this could happen in education. There's been a lot of talk about, people being in Zoom meetings and then someone walks in, wearing a silly hat, or your child runs in or whatever, and obviously the cat running in at the wrong time isn't going to necessarily provide social cohesion, but there's something there about the affordances of tending to be at home during Zoom or Teams lessons, and being able to sort of be humane and perhaps fostering the more horizontal thing rather than the vertical sort of authoritarian approach, where there's something about our shared situation which is more apparent perhaps and could contribute to social cohesion. Teacher-centeredness has got a bad reputation in education, and learner-centeredness is something that we have actively tried to promote as long as I've been teaching. So instead of seeing the teacher as central, the font of all knowledge, all of the experience and life skills and personalities of the people in the room are sort of brought to bear as resources and part of a living community where we hear a lot from them. We find out where they are, we move them on, we move them to the next stage. It isn't really about sort of me or you or other teachers. And that implies, students do a lot of talking, and it's quite communicative, activities based, task based, what have you. It's not quite so easy to do that in Teams and Zoom, partly because of technical reasons. 15 people in breakout rooms, 15 people out. Does screen sharing work? There's lots of instructions that are poorly absorbed, and the need for sort of concept check questions or written descriptions of instructions is quite important. But having said that, I think there is a principled reason to do a bit more teacher talking and to be a bit more teacher centered, at least say, for example, in the first 10 minutes of every session. People can come in a little bit late, or they might be a bit flustered, or they haven't got their mic on, or they're trying to listen and somebody else comes in, or someone sent them a chat message. So to me, the idea of a teacher kind of talking, steady tone, this is what we did last week, this is the goal, this is what our focus is on, you probably remember, we read this, we did that. To me, it's a kind of a settling thing. Not so much maybe sort of authoritarian, like on the vertical, I am your teacher and I will sort of control you and give you the knowledge you need. If you're in education because you like to see people becoming, presumably you don't want them to become just you. So, obviously student-centeredness is very, very important. But I think that 10 minutes, even 15 minutes, speak to the willing, get a bit of interaction going, get something going in chat, let them come in gently before they might not like the way they look. There could be a number of reasons why they might be a bit quiet. But so there are other ways, I think, to draw out student-centeredness. Later on in classes, for example, students can take control of screen sharing, and they can show actually a lot, especially if it's something they're confident in, something they've prepared, not sort of being put on the spot. Perhaps richer input than could be done in a classroom even. A PowerPoint could be right there, an image, a video, or what have you. There tend to be less online classes relative to face-to-face classes, depending on where you work. more than ever, we have to make the most of sort of live contact time. An approach that's been discussed has been the flipped model, where students do work in advance, prepare for, like a live hour, on Zoom or on Teams, and the lesson plan assumes that they will have done the work, so that the lesson aims will not be achieved unless they've done the reading, prepared their 2-minute talk or what have you. That being the case, obviously those kind of things will need backup, in case they don't do the work. Once you know your group, obviously you've got a much better chance of being able to predict whether that's going to happen. From a scholarly point of view, it makes sense to me that it could be like this. Independent learners, higher education, are in an inverted pyramid where, a pyramid where the bulk of the work they do is reading, processing, note-taking, organising, and the moments where they come out into public and demonstrate that or discuss that or share that or build that together. It's kind of like coming up for air, the narrow end of the pyramid time-wise. So that it's sort of like that anyway. I guess there's an emphasis then perhaps on developing the skills of independent learning. Another of the affordances of a medium like Zoom or Teams lessons is that for classes which have a textual focus, anything like a seminar focusing on a text or a reading comprehension or anything like that, there's a natural place to put the text front and center through screen sharing, highlights, notes down the side. For example, using the review function on Microsoft Word, students themselves can put comments in the text that you're looking at even at the same time. So, for example, if you're doing cohesion in a text and the topic was David Beckham, you could highlight all the points where Beckham's mentioned, and perhaps that kind of lexical chaining or whatever becomes more apparent than it would be distantly on the board on a Wednesday afternoon. Who knows, the text is right there rather than over there. And the same goes for collaborative work. Where students are geographically located, there's a sense that the actual room is the context, it's social, and the focus on a text is sort of like secondary. It might be the case that for students who are engaged and committed, that not being geographically located, the text is a kind of a symbolic focus for unity, really, and therefore collaborative documents. They might participate even better than they would when you're in a room working collaboratively on something with somebody over there on a laptop. It doesn't really make quite as much sense as it does online, really. Certainly lots more capacity now for including more things in a class than just a written text or a spoken text. It's often said this is the multimodal age, an age where various modes of communication, meaning making, creativity, different kinds of recordings, juxtapositions of 2 or 3 things, image, music, text, and what have you, I'll characterize our experience in lots of environments, and certainly characterize experience of people younger than myself. If it's not too far-fetched of a metaphor, it's almost like in the former age, the text was like sacrosanct. This is a book, this is the written word, this is what we shall study, and like if you got a little picture, you were lucky. Information was centrally organized by authorities like teachers or librarians or what have you, religious leaders, parents, and you kind of got it for Christmas or your birthday or whatever. I guess I'm referring to my own experience. But now it's not really like that. We're living in a different kind of context, especially people growing up now, young people, where they're surrounded by information. They're literally in the information. The information is everywhere, and they're navigating a way through it. And maybe our job is more to sort of like So, bring your information self, bring your navigator, of information and sort of semiotic resources that you're constantly dealing with, images, GIFs, emojis. Obviously, we're not going to leave out sustained reading and sustained writing, criticality, and everything, but the means of that being expressed and the means of bringing everyone to the party can reflect the value that the classroom can be pretty similar to everywhere else. It doesn't have to be a brick wall that divides people off from the way they are, the way they live, the way they talk, the way they express themselves outside. It can have some shared characteristics which should help the scholarly self, the scientific self, the critical self, the reading, reflecting, growing, becoming, young scholarly self to come in to that environment in a more familiar way, and to know that your whole person is welcomed. That's the idea behind Zoom being potentially a more multimodal space, Zoom and Teams, where these things can be brought in, links, GIFs, emojis. That's the natural kind of dialect in online forums as well. Apart from all that, what strikes me and what I really wanted to say is that, in a sense, it's situation normal. I mean, albeit we're not in a room together, teacher might do a bit more talking, students can present, and what have you. The thing that makes education worthwhile, they're still with us. The ability to build knowledge, the opportunity to become in a different way to how you would have if you were in the institution every day. The opportunities to sort of be creative, make connections, they're still there. I mean, obviously, at this point in history right now has been very, very hard on a lot of people. Some other people have grown tremendously through online classes, online courses, online content. If the internet, had not answered the question, what could you do for us, if we just had to stay indoors all the time. Now it has answered that question. No doubt there's winners and losers there. Of course there are. But the basic thing about, if you're motivated, you have a purpose, you've got that thirst for knowledge, you're in the process of becoming and you want to carry on, Teams and Zoom, with the right scheme of work, with the right approach, with 60% of the class willing and engaged, it can work. We can move forward. We can emerge from this and emerge, into this kind of education, into this kind of life for as long as we need to. And there's no reason why we should be robbed of any opportunity to grow, really.